9:30 is, I know I don't see Cindy.
This meeting is being recorded.
There she is.
I'm here, Vincent.
All right, everybody's ready, and let's start. So, good evening, everyone. I would like to call the June 15th Temple City City Council regular meeting to order. And pursuant to the executive order issued by the governor on March 17, 2020, cities are allowed to hold city council meetings via teleconferencing, and members of the public can observe and address the meeting telephonically or electronically. To listen to the meeting telephonically, please call 1-669-900-6833, meeting ID 811-1858-2184, passcode 788155, or through the city's live webcast on YouTube. Connect with TC. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Chavez?
Here.
Councilmember Mann?
Here.
Vizcara?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Sternquist?
Here.
Mayor Yu?
Here. For those calling in, your audio will be unmuted during public comment, and when public comment is open during an agendized item discussion. You can also email your request to speak to City Clerk at tamilcity.us right now and indicate on the subject line the item you wish to provide comment. Next item is invocation. Tonight, we're very happy to have Pastor Daryl Kelty with Community of Christ Church, located at 5851 Temple City Boulevard, Temple City, and he will provide the invocation. Pastor, thank you.
Thank you.
Please proceed.
O divine Creator, we, your children, are gathered together this evening to conduct the business of the city of Temple City. We do so in order that this community might become an even better community than it already is. We know that this will not be an easy task when one considers all of the problems and difficulties that we now face and hopefully are overcoming. We know that this is not something we can do on our own, but need your divine support and guidance. It is for this reason that we offer this prayer to you this evening. May we, dear Lord, see the world around us and this community as your divine creation, as we are and we are its caregivers. We know that this is not something that we can do on our own, but need your help and guidance. Therefore, dear Father, let us offer this prayer this evening. That through what we do here tonight, tomorrow, and the days following, and the day after that, and the day after that, may we constantly turn to your Spirit, that we might indeed, through what our actions, leave this a better community for now and the future. This we do ask and pray in all humility. Amen.
Amen. Well, thank you, Pastor Kelty.
Thank you.
It's very nice of you to do that.
Well, I was glad.
Next item is
I'm glad to do it. I'm sorry I missed the last time, but I had problems with my video.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay. I'm sure the Lord has heard our prayers just as fine. So thank you, Pastor.
Glad to do it.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Next item is Pledge of Allegiance. So please stand. Put your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance
to the flag
to the flag of the
of the United States of America
and to the
to the
republic
republic for
for
which
which it stands,
one nation,
indivisible, one nation, indivisible,
indivisible, with
liberty and justice.
justice for all.
For all.
Next item is ceremonial matters. There is none. And public comments on items not listed on the agenda. So the city council will now hear public comments regarding items not listed on the agenda. The procedure to address the city council is highlighted on the first page of the agenda. This section is limited to 30 minutes total. For those calling in, your audio will now be unmuted. Please state your name so that you can be added to the speakers list. To avoid callers speaking over each other, we'll call your name to speak. You can also email your request to speak to cityclerk@templecity.us right now and indicate on the subject line the item you wish to provide comment. Madam Clerk, please unmute the phone. Do we have any speakers?
Yes, Mayor, we have one caller. Caller, your audio is unmuted.
Is that caller me?
Yeah, 1-323-383-4379.
Yes. Good evening, Mayor, you and council members. It's Peter Chor from the Temple City Chamber. Can you hear me?
Hi, Peter. How are you?
Hi, Peter.
Oh, hello, everyone. Good evening. I look forward to presenting our quarterly report next month, but wanted to stop by for two quick announcements. Before I do, actually, I hope that most of you have read this month's issue of Temple City Life, especially the cover story on Temple City leading the grand recovery. Today's a big day. Following up on my most recent report to the council, I updated City Manager Cook after my visits with the businesses in the pictorial and noted that post-vaccine, Temple City stakeholders appeared comfortable dining indoors, as shown by the lines of families waiting for an indoor table at Baekjeong and Bistro Naz, etc. At the same time, however, the LA County Board of Supervisors just approved two motions by Supervisor Catherine Barger that seek to make permanent the county's temporary program to fast-track outdoor dining and to identify new locations. Restaurants appreciate it, diners embrace it, and we have the weather for it. So the chamber will continue to monitor this issue and also to see how things go after July 4th, as City Manager Cook just noted earlier. However, the first of our announcements, just two announcements tonight, I've been in communication with Deputy Sheriff Zuniga from the Temple Station regarding an uptick in catalytic converter theft. And the chamber is helping them get out the word that catalytic converter thefts are on the rise in Temple City. The main reason that catalytic converters, which are exhaust emission control devices, are stolen is because they're valuable to scrap metal dealers. They contain precious metals, including platinum, palladium, and rhodium. It can cost you on average up to $2,000 to replace a catalytic converter, and it's illegal to drive your car without one. The Toyota Prius is the most popular model and the biggest target for these thieves. Here are some tips to protect your vehicle's catalytic converter. You can, one, park in a well-lit area or inside a garage. 2, consider installing motion-activated lights around your house. 3, consider purchasing a catalytic converter clamp or have a muffler shop install a $350 protective cover. Or 4, engrave or etch your vehicle's VIN or license plate number onto your catalytic converter. That way, when the police bust a ring, they have some identification to show where these converters came from. We look forward to getting information from the sheriffs, and we'll be publishing and sharing it. We wanted to help them get the word out to the community, both residential and business. Second announcement, finally, if you or anyone you know is job hunting, backed by popular demand, I will be presenting an encore of my Zoom seminar on how to write a resume and how to ace your job interview. Because a bad resume won't get you the interview, and a subpar interview won't get you the job. So whether you're 16 and applying for a summer job or an internship, or whether you're 60 and returning to the workforce, please join the Chamber's free Zoominar on July 14th at 4 p.m. To reserve a spot, just email us at info@templecitychamber.com. That's info@templecitychamber.com. And finally, on behalf of the Chamber, we wish everyone listening a great and safe start to your summer. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Choi. Thank you for that announcement. Anyone else who called in? I don't see any other callers.
There are no other callers.
Madam Clerk, are there any email public comments?
No, no email public comments, Mayor.
Okay, I will close public comments and we move on to consent calendar next. All consent calendar items may be approved in a single motion as recommended unless removed for further discussion. If members of the City Council or persons in the audience wish to discuss any matters listed on the consent calendar, please address them at this time. Madam Clerk, are there any emails to speak?
No, Mayor, there are no requests to speak.
And we don't see any callers either, so are there any comments from council? If not, then I am ready for a motion.
Mayor, you move that we approve the consent calendar.
Second,
It's moved and seconded. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Chavez,
Yes.
Councilmember Mann,
Yes.
Councilmember Viscara,
yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Sternquist,
Yes.
Mayor Yu.
Yes. So the consent calendar has been approved. Next item is item number 8, public hearing, adoption of resolution number 21-5535, approving the master fees and fines schedule for fiscal year 2021 to 2022. So, Mr. City Manager?
Thank you, Mayor Yu and members of the council. Before you tonight is one of 3 items to approve what is comprehensively is the budget and the operating revenues that we use to provide service to the community. This is one of 3 items tonight. The first one is the master fee schedule. Second one is the appropriations limit. And finally is the actual adoption of the 2021-2022 budget. So before you tonight is that Ms. Pagaras, our Administrative Services Director and City Treasurer, will briefly go over the master fee schedule.
Director Vargas, good evening.
Good evening, thank you. Let me share my screen. So I can't tell what screen you're seeing.
We're seeing the PowerPoint presentation. Susan.
Okay, great. So tonight before you is a public hearing to adopt resolution 21-5535, approving the master fees and fines schedule for the fiscal year 2021-22. The schedule is increased by the 2.6% CPI factor, which is between March of 2020 and March of 2021, based on the Bureau of Labor Statistics. We are proposing to increase B1, which is the address assignment or change request, from the Building Services and Development Fees schedule. All the fees that are under business license and permit fees, community preservation fees, parking permit fees, all of planning service fees except for PL1 and PL2, PL5 and PL6, and then all of the public works and engineering fees except for PW8. The fees that are not being increased by the CPI are either because it's charged at actual cost of either staffing salary costs or the consultant's costs. So those are the main reasons those fees are not being increased. The other non-CPI factor are the 2 dog license fees, the annual dog license fees, delinquent fees for the seniors, going from $7.50 to $8. As I mentioned at the study session, this is to round it up and make it easier for the Humane Society to collect the fees. So with that, sorry, lost this slide there. With that, it's recommended that the City Council open the public hearing, receive input, close the public hearing, and adopt resolution number 21-5535, approving the master fees and fine schedule for fiscal year 21-22. I'll take any questions.
Mr. Mayor, you're muted, sir.
Okay, thank you for reminding me. At this time, it's for council to ask any questions of staff. Let's start with Councilmember Chavez. Any questions from you?
Thank you. There seems to be, in looking at this fee schedule, quite a few that are going up like 10 cents and 20 cents, resulting in like just weird numbers. It's going from like, for example, $8.35 to $8.45. Is there a reason for that? Because I noticed, as you just stated, with, for example, the dog license went up to from $7.50 to $8 to round it off to make it easier. Is that the same logic wouldn't apply to many of these others as well?
They were applied with the 5.6%, I don't believe, or the, I'm sorry, 2.6% CPI. I'm trying to look at it.
So that's what we applied to these, is just that across the board, the 2.6?
Yes,
Okay.
I'm rounding it up.
Councilmember Chavez, part of the reason why the Humane Society asked is because there's a lot of cash transactions as well at the Humane Society, but also too, most of our transactions are electronic at this point. We do not take a lot of cash at this point. So in terms of a different number, 846 or others, it's not in terms of the transactions that we do. It's not necessarily material to anything that we do from a transaction standpoint with the customer, but just keeps us moving forward with, when we don't apply CPI, and years ago when we didn't for a couple times, it usually takes a while to catch up to the actual cost of providing the service.
Are we limited to CPI only on these?
No, you're not, but you cannot provide, you cannot charge anything beyond the actual cost of service plus CPI.
Okay, so let's take one example, a liquor store. We currently charge $8.25 per employee and per owner, or I don't even know what that's for, and it went from $8.25 to $8.45, 20 cents increase. And so is there a reason why it wouldn't just go up to $8.50? Is that unlawful, or is we just going with strictly the CPI increase on those?
So perhaps I can help Councilman Chavez. Is it unlawful? No, but it's pushing the boundaries of the law. The law, to set the fees, we had to do a fee study. It's perfectly justifiable to take the numbers from the fee study and add a CPI and continue to get our reasonable costs. If we were to round up on a multi-year basis, we would hit a point where it wasn't justifiable anymore. Could we do it this year once? Yes, we probably could without giving rise to a successful challenge. But it makes more sense to continue to move forward with CPI year on year. And then if the city administrative team feels that something's out of whack, they would have to do a new fee study. But this is a really justifiable way to continue to capture the costs incurred as we move forward.
I don't disagree with the CPI. I know that's certainly something we need to keep up on. So the only exception would be for the animal control, that did that go up 2.6, or is that?
No, it's more than 2.6. It's just to round off.
Yeah.
We can round down if you.
Well, we made a
prefer.
special concession for them. I understand why. Okay. I was just curious because I saw some of these go up like 10 cents and 20 cents, and it's like a lot of weird numbers. And let's see, what else? I have a question. Some of these things, it seems like we haven't used in quite a long time. Like, I can't remember the last time we had a fortune teller establishment. Didn't we have one a couple of years ago, Brian? Didn't remember. That was the only one that I can remember, though. Those costs went up a little bit as well. Okay. All right. Well, thank you for the explanation. I appreciate it. I have no other questions, Mary.
Thank you, Councilmember Chavez. Councilmember Min, any questions?
I have no questions at this time.
Councilmember Viscara.
None, no questions.
Mayor Pro Tem Sternquist.
No questions, just a comment. I think it's very common these days to have bills or I don't know about fines, but to be, in strange amounts like 36 cents or 15 cents. I mean, I think our trash service is like that also. Isn't that the case, Brian? So
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem.
yeah, I don't think anybody's going to be uncomfortable paying an odd number, although it's kind of nice to round up. I mean, I do that with my checkbook just so I always have extra money. But it drives my husband crazy. But anyway, I think the fee schedule is fine.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I too don't have any questions, and Councilmember Chavez asked the question that I was going to ask. Could we round up or down? To make these numbers easy. But I guess and so that's been asked and answered. I'll open up public hearing. Madam Clerk, are there any email comments?
Mayor, there are no email public comments.
And I don't see any callers. So I will close public comment. And any final questions or comments from council? Anyone? Hearing none, then we're ready for a council motion.
I'll move that we adopt resolution number 21-5535, approving the master fees and fine schedules for fiscal year 2022.
Second?
Okay, it's moved and seconded. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Yes, Mayor. Councilmember Chavez?
Yes.
Councilmember Mann?
Yes.
Councilmember Viscara?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Sternquist?
Yes.
Yes. So this item has been approved. Moving on to the next item, which is adoption of resolution number 21-5534, adopting the annual appropriations limit for fiscal year 2021 to 2022. Mr. City Manager, would you please start?
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. This is part 2 of the 3-part saga that is the municipal budget adoption process. Before you tonight is the GAN limit. This stems from way back when in Prop 13 and the appropriations limits that the amount that agencies are allowed to raise and then therefore spend. Historically, the city has been very far below the GAN limit, so we have not run afoul, nor have we run a risk of exceeding the GAN limit going forward. So with that, I'll turn it over to the Director of Administrative Services and your City Treasurer.
Thank you, Mr. Cook. So as Mr. Cook mentioned, it is a public hearing that's required by Proposition 4. It restricts the amount of tax proceeds that we can appropriate on an annual basis. And it also requires the City Council adoption of the limit. For fiscal year 21-22, with all the factors being used in calculating it, the appropriations limit for the City of Temple City is $23,883,509. Our amount subject to limit is $9,371,707. Therefore, we still have a gap of $14,511,000 that we're allowed to appropriate. And the $9.37 million reflects 39.2% of the 23,883,509 appropriations limit. So tonight, it's recommended that the City Council open the public hearing, receive input, close the public hearing, and adopt resolution number 215534, adopting the annual appropriations limit for fiscal year 2021-2022.
Okay, thank you, Director Paragus. And we'll start with council questions, starting with Councilmember Chavez.
No questions, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Mann.
No questions. Thanks.
Councilmember Viscara,
No questions.
Mayor Pro Tem Sternquist.
No questions.
I don't have any questions because this is mainly procedural and legal requirement. I'll open up public hearing. Madam Clerk, are there any email public comments?
There are no email public comments.
And I don't see any callers, so I will close public comments. At this time, are there any council final questions or comments from anyone? Hearing none, we're ready for a motion.
I'll make a motion, Mayor.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion to adopt resolution number 21-5534, adopting the annual appropriations limit for fiscal year 2021-2022.
I'll second.
It's moved and seconded. Madam Clerk, roll call vote, please.
Yes, Mayor Yu. Councilmember Chavez,
Yes.
Councilmember Mann,
Yes.
Councilmember Viscara,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Sternquist,
Yes.
Mayor Yu.
Yes. So the the motion has carried. Next item is adoption of the proposed budget for fiscal year 2021 to 2022. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor Yu and members of the council. When we came to you last year for the fiscal year 2021 budget, we were in the midst of COVID. We were concerned and the revenue drops were dramatic and fast. We had recovered through fiscal year 2021 with a slight surplus. And as we are getting out and into this post-pandemic environment over the next, starting today and over the next few months, we are looking forward to a recovery. We are a property tax-based city, so our recovery is not as dramatic and as steep as other agencies that rely on sales tax and other revenues that are cyclical with the economy. But I'm proud to present to you again, and after an extensive study session last week with the council, all of you asking questions and asking us to bring forward to you the proposed 21-22 budget that has a very, very slight surplus, the slightest we've had, and provides for a level of service that we could recognize in a pre-pandemic. Park and recreation services back. We will be gearing those up in late July. Services across the board back to a level that the community expects. And if I would be remiss if I did not compliment both the staff, council, and thanks to the community over the last year. The fiscal year 2021 budget was tough, but we did continue to provide service. Our city hall is open, operating with appointments. Our sheriff's department was out providing service to the community with one of the lowest crime rates in all of Los Angeles County. Our field teams were out. We've done a great job over the last year. This is kind of a back to normal budget, and it is, and we have appropriated it that way. There are two updates I'd like to provide to you in addition. from when we just last discussed the budget. One, we did discuss that the Recovery Act funding was not included in this budget. Last week, we did receive direct communication from the state, and I did sign off on several compliance documents related to receiving Recovery Act funds. At this point, it looks like, and you can see it's up for public comment on the Department of Finance's website. It looks like the city will be able to receive over the next 12 months up to $8 million in Recovery Act funding. By mid-July of this month, we will receive deposited about a little over $4 million. So half of that will be deposited sometime in mid-July. The state has 30 days for non-entitlement small cities like ours to disperse those funds to us. While not reflected in any of the documents you see today, that $4 million would essentially go to a assigned fund balance, general fund balance. Your total fund balance right now is about 20.5 million. That would go up to about 24.5 million. Your unassigned is about 14.4 million. That would go up to 18.4 million. We will be returning back to council the second meeting of August once the guidelines are established. But the way we understand the guidelines generally right now is there's two buckets. One is for just COVID-related reimbursements and cost, and the other one is community benefit. So it seems as though there is a wide range of projects, initiatives that the council can consider. And as mentioned by Councilmember Mann and Councilmember Chavez at our last meeting as well, looking at your priorities from the past is really important now to look at, see what kind of projects you would fund. Our only suggestion as staff for the council to consider with that funding going forward is that it be used for one-time funding, because it is a one-time source of funding that we will be getting. But the restrictions do not seem as tight. The other issue is we may not see the entire $8 million because there are other restrictions related to revenue loss that Susan will still have to calculate, but we can guarantee at least $4 million of that will be deposited in mid-July. So that's one update. The other update is we've been asked to bring forward a consideration of a one-time rebate for Athens customers, and we have a couple slides that will walk you through that. And it's a consideration of a one-time rebate with all that's happened with COVID, the adjustments we've had to make over the last year or so with Athens. The proposal,
Brian?
Yes.
I'm sorry, can I just interrupt you? When you said we've been asked, who asked?
I've had council members ask.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, for that to be brought forward.
Okay, I just think it's important I wasn't sure, and for the public to know.
No problem. So the consideration of a one-time rebate to Athens customers. The proposed expenditure, which we pegged at $300,000, the council can decide what level they'd like to do that, would take your fund balance from 20.5 million to 20.3, but you do have right now unassigned, meaning funding that's not dedicated to any projects, not dedicated to emergency reserves or anything else. Your current unassigned fund balance is 6.5 million. So, but again, you can decide to appropriate that any way you'd like, divide it between residential and commercial customers. So we'll get into that in just a few more minutes as Susan goes through the rest of the presentation. Otherwise, as presented at the study session, the staff is bringing forward to you a budget that's operationally balanced, still very tight, and really provides, and this is what we can be proud of, a continuity of service going forward and back to a lot of pre-pandemic efforts. What we've learned, though, is for things like appointments and some of the programming that we've done, lessons learned through this pandemic, those things are continuing on forward as well. Those are reflected in the budget. Those are reflected in this new way that we've been operating, which is exciting. I think provides a level of customer service enhancements that we didn't really have in the past because we weren't forced to kind of adjust as we were over the last 18 months. And one of the biggest things this budget presents is that so much of the parks and recreation, community services, community events were suspended. This budget assumes all of those, the vast majority of those events coming back and gradually coming back. Not many of those events are not coming back tomorrow or even next week, but later in July, early August, and going forward, those events would be proposed to come back, which is exciting and a step towards not just a recovery journey, but a recovery that means we are back to some sense of what we used to do as a community. Lastly, before I turn it over to Susan, I'd like to thank her, staff, Susan, for all their hard work, the executive team and the staff who worked on the budget that's presented to you today. And lastly, I'd like to thank the City Council. Your fiscal stewardship of the city has really put us in a position to weather this storm that we've been through. Consider the items that are brought before you here tonight. We wouldn't be in this position without that. So thank you to the City Council. And with that, I'll turn it over to Susan.
Thank you, Brian. So as Brian Cook mentioned, this is the biggest item tonight. It's to adopt the proposed budget for next fiscal year, 2021-22. Sorry. So the item before you is proposing that council provide direction on additions and deletions to the proposed operating budget and CIP. Approve resolution number 215533, adopting the fiscal year 2021-2022 proposed budgets, including any revisions made tonight, and then review and approve updates to the general fund reserve classifications. As mentioned 2 weeks ago in our study session, we do have a very small surplus of $415 based on revenues and transfers ins of $14,683,155. And then our expenditures transfers out are going to be $14,682,740. And this pie chart just shows you our revenues, where it's coming from. As you can see, a majority, 46%, almost half of our general fund revenues are coming from taxes. And that includes sales tax, property taxes, franchise fees, etc. And then you have intergovernmental, which is the in lieu business license fee taxes, which is also really property taxes. So between the two, we've got over about 85% revenues for those streams. So in essence, our general fund revenues are estimated to increase by 4.1%, or almost $608,000. Taxes are up by 8.5%. License and permit fees at 5.6%. Our charges for services, 19.3%, and 88.2% on the fines and forfeitures. And the reason why that is so large is during fiscal year 2021, we've reduced the budget for the fines and forfeitures, only because we're not enforcing parking permits, we're not enforcing overnight parking, and thus the projected income for next year is to increase by almost $203,000. And then the only thing that's, as far as categories are concerned, the use of money is estimated to decrease by almost 19%. And as you know, interest rates are very low during this time and continues to be low. So that's about a $39,000 decrease for our budget. Now going to expenditures, as you can see, it's almost spread out into the five different functions, being the public safety. As I mentioned, for any city, the public safety budget is always the largest. We have our general government, which are the departments that do behind the scenes functions. Then we have community services and community development, as well as public works. For the expenditure side, we're looking at a 5.8% increase, which is about $791,000. As you recall at the study session, we mentioned that the personnel costs are going up by over $331,000. And primarily that's because of the increased budgeted hours for the part-time staff at Parks and Recreation as they gear up for the programs that we'll be proposing next year. And as well as the reestablishment of the Building and Code Inspector 1 position. So that will be fully funded for fiscal year 21-22. And then we have our usual CalPERS retirement costs increase of $55,675. And in 21-22, we do have an election year. It's an election year, therefore we're budgeting election costs at almost $153,000. And then the sheriff's contract at $172,435, which is a 3.7% increase. And that's their actual contract increased by 1.5%, but because we decreased the budgeted amount this year, the total change in that is 3.7%. And on a budget note, just to inform you, the departments are maintaining a zero travel budget. So we have not increased or added any travel budgets same as this year. And then also,
Mayor, I'm sorry, I have a quick question, Mary, if you don't mind.
Please.
On the zero department travel budget, does that include city council as well?
No, city council, I believe, trying to remember, I don't recall.
Last year we
Yes.
cut the council elected to cut their travel budget in half. That's remained for this year.
Oh, okay, because the only reason I bring it up is I know that League of California Cities and Contract Cities are both gearing up to have their annual conferences, I believe in September and October. So usually council members will be attending those.
Yeah.
Last year council has a $15,000 budget.
Okay, well, that should be more than enough. Thank you.
And then we've eliminated also for fiscal year 21-22 budgeting for the 2 vacant mid-manager positions. So what is the general fund fiscal year 21-22 budget proposes? It maintains service levels. We provide a balanced budget, even though it's only $415. We're continuing the offline or online appointments. It reestablishes a Building Code Inspector 1, as I mentioned, and we're rescheduling the Parks and Recreation programs, as Mr. Cook discussed. It includes the election budget for the next year, and it does not include the American Rescue Plan Act allocation. So we have that to look forward to in July. So here again is the expenditure and revenues of fiscal year 21-22, showing the slight budget surplus of $415. So the fund balance estimates, we're looking at about $20,527,373 for July 1, 2021. And you add in the surplus of $415. So our estimated fund balance at the end of fiscal year 21-22 is $20,527,788. And this is the fund balance classification that council has to approve every year. So in 2021, this is our estimates. So in proposed 21-22, we have a committed amount of $3.5 million for economic uncertainties. We do have an assigned specific projects for $10,455,000, of which a council can decide on how to reallocate those amounts or reassign it to a different project. But overall, as Mr. Cook had mentioned, our unassigned funds, which is really something we don't have any projects geared for it, is a $6.57284 of unassigned funds. But in total, you can take a look at it's almost $17 million of available reserve funds. And I'll let Mr. Cook discuss this slide.
Sorry, Susan, if you could go back up real quick to the prior slide. So just two quick things. One, the fee schedule that you just approved did not reflect the revenue in this budget, correct, Susan?
That's
so we're going to have a slight surplus above the $415. So that will be one. Two, just so you, and I alluded to it earlier about the $4 million we're going to receive in fund balance. What we would propose to do, and we would talk to the auditors about this, is that $4 million would go into assigned specific projects. And there's a reason for that. One is that because it's time specific that we need to spend it, and it's going to be assigned to specific type of expenditures going forward based on your decisions going forward. So you're going to see essentially a 6 line item that says, at least for now, and after we confer with the auditors as well, the Recovery Act funds of a little over 4 million. So so you'll see that number change from about 20.5 to 24 million and some change. So next slide, please. And then our surpluses will have grown just a bit from the $415 by about a little over $20,000. Susan, you're on mute, Susan.
The revenues are estimated to be about $25,000 to $30,000 in addition.
So you have a little bit more room in your surplus at this point. So I was asked to bring forward an idea of, and we brought forward a one-time proposal of $300,000 that would have to be brought out from the city's general fund reserves. So it'll be a little bit less based on your drawdown on general fund reserves based on the fee schedule that was just proposed. But what would be considered, and we'll come back to this because I know this is going to this will be a discussion point for the council, is that we would propose to provide a credit to each customer, a one-time temporary rebate payable in whatever sequence of amount of months we want to do, 6 or 12 months. But the way we broke it down is just for your consideration is $300,000 split between residential and commercial customers, 150,000 for about, this is the old slide. That's not correct.
Brian,
Yes.
why was the $300,000 the amount specified?
There was no rhyme or reason in terms of that. What it did is it provided some relief to the annual rebate increase.
Okay. I just want to ensure that that number didn't come from the monies that'll go into our general fund from Athens.
Well, the 300,000 in lieu fee is included in the operating revenues of the budget. So that is a number that's out there, but that's already been included in the budget amount. Can somebody please find the slide that the corrected slide for this, because it's not 7,000 and 2,000.
So was this staff's number?
Yes, I created this number. This is the number I created. Yes.
You created.
Yes, I developed that number. Peggy or Jillian, can we find that slide? Thank you.
Mr. City Manager, are you looking for the number of accounts?
Yes, this was an incorrect amount.
For residential, the other 1,300 is the commercial accounts.
Yeah.
That's in your news.
Yeah, that was in the revised one. What we can do until we can come back to this. Susan, why don't you finish your presentation, and then I can come back to this.
Okay, I apologize for that. So, do you want me to skip over this, or? So this is just
I can go through this. I can go through this very briefly. So if the council was to consider tonight, and that would move slightly up a bit based on the fee increase, but your general fund balance would go from 20.5 million to a little over 20.2 million, 20.25 approximately, as a one-time rebate. And then we would take that from unassigned, we would propose, if the council were to consider it, to take it from unassigned fund balance. Go ahead, Susan. And so you see where the numbers go there.
So this is the unassigned balance revision, should council approve the $300,000 rebate. So it would go from 6.572 million to 6.272 million dollars. So moving on to the 5-year forecast, as mentioned in the budget study session, we are looking at a flat assessed property values for the next 5 years. Temporary parking permits and the parking permits, as well as the recreation fees, are anticipated to get back to some normal levels. Recreation fees is the one that is anticipated to be at least 100% come fiscal year 22-23. Sales tax is flat. We're hoping that it'll increase by a little bit more as the COVID-19 restrictions are lifted, but we are projecting at a flat rate of 1%, 2% for the next 4 years. On the expenditure side, we do have one more year left of the TC bargaining group agreement of 1.5%, but you're seeing a 0% as it's not, we're not anticipating anything just yet until we get into negotiations. So that's some of the assumptions in the 5-year forecast. We have, of course, our premiums such as general liability and health insurance going up by a 5% or 7% increase. Our PERS lump sum continue to increase, although it's flattening out the rest of the years. And then sheriff's contract, as I mentioned earlier, we're looking at 3.7 increase for next fiscal year, and we're projecting a 5% increase in the following 4 years. So in the graph, this is what it looks like. You'll see the ups and downs of the expenditures, and that's primarily because of the election year. So as we have an election year, you can see that we have deficits in our fiscal year budgets. Our revenues also continue to go up, contract costs go up, but because of the election costs, our surplus and deficits varies depending on the year. So what are the future issues for the general fund? As mentioned earlier, the CalPERS unfunded liabilities. So that is determined by the performance of CalPERS investments. Since I've been a finance director, it's always gone up, or I'm a director. The unfunded liabilities for all cities have gone up for CalPERS. The future issues, again, next year will be negotiating with the employee bargaining unit, the increasing cost of our contract services. Then on the flip side, our property values continue to increase, which of course results in a higher property tax revenues. And also, as we recover from the COVID-19 impacts or the lifting of the restrictions, we're hoping to see increases in our revenues. For the city-wide budgets, of course, you see the general fund, the special revenue funds, which include the revenues that are restricted for specific types of expenditures. So next year, we're looking at $5.9 million revenue with a 13.16 expenditure. So you'll notice the deficit there, and I'll talk about that at the next slide. In our success.
Susan?
Yes.
Susan, does that include the monies, excuse me, that Brian spoke to that you had found when looking into, I forget what it was that you were looking into, but I asked him to have you look into it. And there was a pot of money of about $400,000. What was that?
Are you talking about the AB 939 funds?
Brian, was that what it was?
The 400,000 or the housing? You're talking about the housing.
Yes.
No, this does not include housing fund balance. This is
okay. So that doesn't go under successor agency fund at all.
This is strictly the revenues we will receive and the expenditures will be paying out. So that
Okay.
400 and I think it's like 450,000, 460,000 is sitting at a reserve balance.
So it's in our reserve number.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So here is an explanation of the deficit for the special revenue funds. It's primarily because of the CIP projects that we budgeted for fiscal year 21-22. You'll see that the total is almost $9.3 million. So net balance for the fiscal year, you'll see in red, it really says their deficit spending for the year. However, they do have it in their available fund balance. So in the beginning of July 2021, this is their fund balances. And when we budget for the CIP projects, you'll see the estimated ending fund balance is still positive, either zero or positive. So we don't go into a deficit fund balance for these special revenue funds. And for the capital improvement program, these are the funds and what they're funding for as far as projects. You can see AQMD, the state parks grant, as well as the lighting and landscape district are funding the Primrose Park and parking lot. We also have Measure M, Measure R, Prop C, and the Road Maintenance and Repair Act funding the pavement management street resurfacing plan. So all this total to the 9.287985 that was on the previous slide. This next slide just shows you in summary the different funds and what we're carrying over that we did not spend in fiscal year 2020 and 2021. So we're carrying it over into fiscal year 21-22. And really the only new funding sources are the $261.885, which is new funding for the Primrose Park. And here's a pie chart of what those sources look like. As you can see, the state park grant is the largest at almost 31%. We've got Prop C here in the blue at almost over 19.2%. So we have all these funding sources that we can provide in completing the CIP projects. And again, this is summary by the type of projects. We've got the parks and maintenance at over $3 million, and then the street construction maintenance at $6.2 million. And there's your total, the 9.287. And this is just the details of what those projects are in the parks and maintenance facilities.
Lily?
And this is the one for the streets construction maintenance. So you can see the biggest piece is the pavement management project at $5.33 million.
Are you done? No.
And then so the city council priorities that we did about 2 years ago, I believe, we are funding projects. We've got the pavement street management plan, street surfacing plan. We have the Primrose Park design and construction. So those are fully funded for next year. However, as we discussed, there were unfunded projects, and in the blue are the potential funding sources. We're going from city facilities improvements all the way to possibly street and traffic and street signs replacements. And we will be having a meeting, as Mr. Cook discussed, to prioritize council's needs. However, the immediate needs for the city right now are the city facilities improvements, the former chamber site property, the pavement resurfacing both for residential and non-residential, then also the playground replacements at our parks. So in conclusion, the complete proposed fiscal year 21-22 budget, we maintain service levels. The general fund budget is balanced. We're establishing the building and code inspector one that we did not fund this year. We're rescheduling parks and recreation programs, as Mr. Cook mentioned earlier. We're continuing to invest in the community with the new park and the pavement street resurfacing. And this does not include the American Rescue Plan Act allocation. So tonight, we're recommending that City Council provide direction on additions or deletions to the proposed budgets. Approve resolution number 215533, adopting the fiscal year 2021-2022 proposed budgets, including any revisions made tonight, and review and approve the updates to the general fund reserve classifications.
And now with that, I'll transition back to the proposed one-time rebate. So if that slide could come up, please.
Sure.
Thank you. That is it. Great. So the as part of for your consideration tonight would be a one-time $300,000 proposal to essentially bill to each customer. And I'll go, and there's a little bit of nuance to this, but right now we'd like to get your general understanding of where you would want to go. But it would be a one-time rebate payable in either 6 months, 9 months, or 12 consecutive months. As staff, we just divided it between two, the larger accounts. The residential accounts, meaning the standard, there's about 7,000 plus or minus on average. This is not, we'll get through it. This is.
I think that's still the old slide.
Yeah, I don't have it, Brian.
Ms. Nunez, could you bring up your slide, please?
Yes, give me 1 second. Let me pull it up.
Thank you, appreciate it.
So I said, I would like to have each. So they came back and they said $100,000. We're having that discussion. I said, I'm going to recommend. So now they want to do that. To pay your trash, $260 per household. Oops.
Give me 1 second. I'm pulling up the slides from the VPN. Sorry about this.
There we are. Is there any way to expand that a little bit more so we can all see it? Okay. Perfect, thank you. So a proposal before you tonight would be to use $300,000 from unassigned fund balance, and we noted where that was going to bring unassigned fund balance from 6.5 to about 6.2 million. It would be a one-time rebate spread over several months. Staff is presented to split that cost or split that amount, $150,000 for about an average of 7,400 residential accounts. The residential accounts meaning those who receive the standard 64 cart, or if they wish to upgrade to the 96 cart service, which would, if you broke it up into between two schedules, on a 6-month schedule, that would be a credit to the bill of about $3.38 a month or $1.69 for 12 months, for a total rebate over the cost of the year of about $20.27, which represents about a little over 3%, which there's been 2 increases in the last 6 months. One, when we adopted the amended and restated agreement with Athens of a one-time about 3.6% increase on residential rates. So that would be one. The other would be, and again, staff proposal in front of you of $150,000 for about 1,300 commercial accounts. That would represent, if you took what is the standard bin rate of once a week, the rebate would be approximately $19.24 a month, or $9.62 for a one-time rebate, about $115. We will have to differentiate some of the commercial accounts though, because some of the commercial accounts do provide, and Athens and Mr. Chen pointed this out to me as well, some do provide cart service that is similar in cost or cost structure to the residential accounts. So we would have to probably come back to you with a little bit of differentiation so that it's not on average that every single account would receive $19.24 rebate. So that would something we'd have to ferret out a little bit, but that's just to give you an average and a general understanding of how you could choose to rebate this back between residential only and commercial. You could decide to put a little bit more money in. It's really at the council's discretion. This is unassigned fund balance, so your overall assigned fund balance goes down just a little bit, but when you consider the overall fund balance, your fund balance is still going to go up once we receive the AARP money of several $1 million. So,
Right.
Yes, sir.
Just so I'm clear, what happens at the end of 12 months?
Our end of 12 months or whatever month, whatever time period you
Or
would,
6 months, whichever.
that would there would be a line item in the individual customer's bill, and it would say city rebate for X amount of months, and it would just go away. So they'll still see and this is an item later on in the agenda, is the annual increase. So they'll see what their true amount is. They would see a credit from the city for that period of time. And we would work with Athens to make sure the description is clear as to that's the city rebate, it's for 6 months, and it's for that amount.
And then at the end of that period, they wind up getting the increase anyway.
It's just it's literally you as the city giving a rebate. The increase would still go into place. The increase that's before you at this next item is part of the contract, part of the annual CPI +1 capital replacement fee. So
yeah, I understand that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this would just show up as a one-time defined period of credit to each bill.
Brian?
Yes, Councilmember Pro Tem Sternquist.
So well, I guess I can wait till questions, but just because we're on that line of topic, what is the goal here?
I think the goal here is to provide some relief to the customers, who residents and commercial customers, to provide some one-time relief to get through this time. It's been rough, I know, for some customers, and just to provide some one-time relief, with COVID and everything else that's happened, to provide that one-time relief.
Is there a reason we didn't offer one-time relief going forward with our Parks and Rec programs?
We haven't had that discussion. We do subsidize those fees. We do not get full cost recovery for those, and that's generally an approach for most cities to look at in terms of how they provide parks and recreation services.
Okay. I just have so many questions, but I will refer to when my time comes up.
And that's that, Mary, that's it for my presentation.
Okay, thank you. It's time for council member questions. I will start with council member Chavez.
Okay. What are we taking questions on? The budget, or on this Athens rebate, or anything?
Well,
I'm a little lost, because we have an Athens matter on the agenda after this budget. So I'm
Right.
not sure when I'm supposed to discuss what.
I think what's before us, I believe, is really approving the budget and including in the proposed budget, there's a $300,000 item for us to consider, and how we spend it is actually is up to us. Or not.
Or
even
not
have
spend it, or not spend it.
Or not spend it at
Okay.
all. But yeah, so.
Okay, so, all right, so let me form this question then. So I completely kind of understand what is being asked of us here. And I hope that others who are listening in, or those who may listen in later, will understand what we're doing here as well. So there is a proposal to spend $300,000, basically as city manager Cook, to provide a one-time relief to our residents and commercial accounts or commercial businesses. But if I'm calculating correctly, based on the numbers that have been provided to us, a one-time relief for residents is basically $20 for the entire year. And for commercial, it's $115 for the entire year. Is that correct?
Yes, if you were to split it that way, that's what, on average, that's what it would.
Well, I mean,
how it would play.
that's what I'm looking on the screen. I mean, I understand apparently that we could decide tonight, well, let's spend 200,000 on the residential accounts and 100,000 on the commercial. I suppose that's up to us to how we want to split up the pie. Is that correct?
It is general fund money, which you have the discretion to appropriate.
And of course, this general fund money can be used for other things as well, not just for this rebate, correct?
Correct.
Okay, well, I don't know that I really have any more questions. I have probably more comments about this than questions, I suppose. So I'll go ahead and defer to my colleagues on this portion of it. And if something else comes up based on that, we can always come back, I suppose. So thank you, Mayor Yu.
Thank you, Councilmember Chavez. Councilmember Min, any questions for the budget?
Yeah, just actually, I have a question unrelated to the rebate item that's on the screen. Just for clarification, I know within the Parks and Rec budget, there's a specific item that we're calling the Temple City Unified School District. And I know that the line item says it's for Star Club and youth sports. Is that to presume that essentially, since COVID hit, all of that kind of stopped? So is the budget essentially reflecting we anticipate resuming those on school property, on City Unified School District property? Yes.
We have not solidified that yet with the school district, but yes, that's what that assumes.
Okay, and do we have any idea when that discussion would, I guess, occur to figure that out moving forward?
I'll be meeting with the school district this week and the superintendent on a regular meeting. It's one of the items I'll be bringing forward.
Okay. Okay, and then I guess my question, the rate rebate. I guess from staff's perspective, is there any reason for 6 versus 12 months? Like, would you see any pros or cons between each one?
Well, for people just looking at their bill, if they look at the bill, we'll work with Athens to make sure that there's, it's clear that it's a one-time rebate and everything else. But I think it's just, there will be another contractually, you will see this time next year, another CPI +1 rate increase adjustment. So I think it's more of the sense of people having a perspective of what they were just looking at the bottom line total. of their bill, just having a good sense of what that looks like, rather than it going 12 consecutive months through, maybe do it for 6, and then they can see that bottom line number, even though the bill will clearly demonstrate what the total amount is with the increases or the adjustments, what the credit is and what their total is. But just, I think it's more of just, if people are just looking at that grand total, having a sense of what their costs are going forward.
So I guess hypothetically, if it was, say, months, then I guess they would see the increase. They would see the increase after 6 months, and then would see the regular CPI +1 increase at the beginning of the fiscal year as well.
They'll see it in their bill already, assuming passage of the resolution or the CPI item later tonight. That will already be, so their new rate will already be there. So the CPI +1 for July 1st will already be in their bill. What this would be a credit that would just like you receive a credit from any other utility or whatever service you would be receiving. If you had Netflix and it was $14 a month to have Netflix, and they went up a little bit to $15, they credited you for 6 months, you'd still see the $15 for your credit for the cost of the service, minus whatever discount the Netflix was giving you, just as a hypothetical example.
Okay, and since at least I don't recall us having done something like this before, but we know that Athens is able to execute something like this in the billing process.
Yes, I've spoken with, and Mr. Warner and Mr. Chen are on the line too as well, and we discussed, and they are able to do this.
Okay. All right. I don't have any more questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Scar, any questions on budget?
No, I think I'm clear. Thank you.
Member Tim Sternquist, any question on budget?
Well, when you say, are there any questions on budget, is this when we can ask our questions regarding the rebate?
Yeah, well, we can talk about the budget for the rebate or no rebate, but as far as if we were going to do ethics or not, there is an item later on tonight that we can talk about how that money is distributed. But I think right now we're talking about whether or not the $300,000 is something that we should consider.
So yeah. Greg, I'm going to ask you if for some reason I'm going down the wrong path at the wrong time, would you just please let me know?
I'd be happy to. And the first thing I would say is, until the public speaks, let's keep it to questions and then give opinions after we hear from the public. But yes, we really want to right now ask questions about, sort of what this came from, what the process would be to implement it, like Councilmember Mann just asked. Things like that are appropriate right now, and the comments are appropriate after we hear from the public.
Okay, so I'm going to phrase them then as a question and then give my opinion after. Is that okay?
That's fine.
So, first of all, Brian, you mentioned that you and I have had brief discussions on this topic, but you mentioned that a council member brought this issue or this rebate idea to you, and that $300,000 was an amount that you came up with. I just want, I guess my question is, when any one of us as a council member has any amount of money that we are asking our colleagues to approve of, I mean, we tend to go through lengthy discussions. We put them on the agenda, whether that's library art, library garden of $20,000, etc. My question is this an appropriate way to ask Greg for a $300,000 rebate because it's part of the budget. Shouldn't council be discussing a large amount of money like this to see if indeed it's something that we think we should move forward with? I mean, it in every other agency that I participate in, we do budgets. This would not happen this way.
So if the question is it legally appropriate, I would say yes, because you had a study session where normally a large expenditure like this, and I should call it a large expenditure. Your CIP projects are much larger, but an expenditure like this would normally come up in the study session. As I understood it from the city manager, the idea came up after the study session, and so it was brought tonight as a budget line item with some sort of vague ideas. The dollars are out there, but they're preliminary, I guess, ideas as to how to exactly split up this budget line item and how to run the program. It certainly is the case that you could, through the budget, approve the $300,000 line item and then ask the city manager to come back for a deeper discussion about how to carve it up. And I think he would be willing to do that.
Okay, so from a legal standpoint, any one of us with an idea for a large expenditure can just ask the city manager to please put that on the agenda through the budget process, and we would be able to vote on it?
As I said, it's kind of a unique circumstance in that it didn't come up prior to the study session where you normally would have ideas like this put in. Legally, if you had the idea, had the discussion with the city manager, yes, that it could be done at the study session. It could be done at this point. The five of you are going to make the decision together.
Did I miss something at the study session, Greg? Because I don't recall any rebate being discussed.
I was not present that night, ma'am.
Okay, so let me ask the city manager then.
No, this item was not brought for discussion at the study session, Mayor Pro Tem.
Okay, Greg, so with that not taking place.
Right, so it could be done tonight as part of adoption of the budget overall, and you can have the discussion. Certainly, questions are being raised now. The discussion can be had after, or frankly, an item like this could have come up months from now and been asked to be placed on an agenda as a budget amendment.
Okay, and then my next question would be, would we be having this discussion spending $300,000 on anything had we not if we were not receiving $300,000 from Athens into the general fund?
I have to defer that to others who would know.
Who would know that? Who would know that that's online?
I don't, as this item is presented to you today, the 300,000 in lieu amount that Athens remits to us as part of the existing amended agreement. Would that be there? No, I think this is more about what the most recent increases were and them happening consecutively over a couple within one year.
Okay, so my question would be, is with this $300,000 as part of the budget, Greg, could we discuss other issues per the budget where we would like to see this $300,000 go versus a rebate, a one-time rebate?
I don't see why not, because those other issues wouldn't be in the budget document itself. We might have to come back at a special meeting with the budget adjusted. This has been proposed and I believe the budget reflects it. So the budget would have to be reprinted, rerun so that it showed it coming out as the five of you direct. But certainly you can have that kind of discussion at a budget meeting, yes.
Okay, I would like to ask my colleagues to postpone deciding on this $300,000 until we're able to give more input as to what we would like to see this $300,000, be used for. I think it's prudent for us with this amount of money and the budget to postpone it until we have those discussions and a study session.
I'm going to ask the other members of the council to not respond to that yet, because that would be starting to get into the discussion, which has to come after the public speaks.
Okay, that's fine, Greg.
We'll probably get that time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let me ask a quick question just as a follow-up to that line. Is voting for the passage of this budget as proposed also a yes vote for the rebate? Or is that something that's going to be decided at some later point? That's why I brought up, it seems to me that we're doing this backwards, because we have an item already on the agenda to discuss Athens and the rate structures or whatever it is. So that's my concern is what are we really voting for here? If, because that's where I have a problem, is that if I vote yes on this budget, which other than this little wrinkle here appears to be what we decided on at the study session, is that a yes vote for this 300 one-time total rebate? That's the question I have.
Council would have to make a decision as to adding this in. So that would be essentially, somebody would say, the council would vote for the budget as it was proposed. This is a new item related to the discussion of the budget. The council would have to affirmatively, through a vote, include that. So we would probably look for, if the council was so inclined tonight, we would ask for an additional motion to include this addition.
Okay, so Brian.
All right, so let me rephrase, because I don't think the question was really answered. And it can really be answered pretty simply. Is a yes vote for this budget also a yes vote for this rebate of $300,000? That can be answered yes or no, I think.
Part of the beginning part of the discussion of the presentation, we asked for additional either deletions or additions to the budget. This would be part of that discussion. So if this is something you want to take on at a different time, the council could adopt the budget as proposed. If there was if you wanted to add this proposal to the budget, you could do that.
Okay, then
I'm not sure, again, I take that as a yes, then, I guess. If that's what it means. Am I incorrect? Maybe Greg, you want to?
I believe I understand, and I believe that I may have caused some of the confusion in responding to the Mayor Pro Tem, and so I apologize for that. It was my understanding that this line item had been added into the budget. What I'm understanding the city manager to say is that it has not been added into the budget yet, and the question is before you as to whether to add it or not. So to your point, Councilman Chavez, if you made a motion after public comment at the appropriate time, if you made a motion to adopt the budget as is, then this item, this $300,000 expenditure would not be included in there.
Would not or would be?
Would not.
Okay, well, all right, so then what you're saying is we have to adopt the budget and this portion to the budget in order for it to be part of it.
Right.
So simply,
prior to adopting the budget, there would be a separate motion to add this line item into the budget in the appropriate place. Okay. And then having added it in, you would then make the motion to adopt the budget.
Okay, all right, thank
Greg?
you.
Ma'am.
Could we not, if we decided down the road, could we not then add it to the budget? It's not a,
Certainly a
has to
budget
be-
adjustment can be done that way. Yes,
okay, so it doesn't have to be now or never.
correct. And I want to respond to something else that Mr. Chavez said, which was, we have another Athens item. That item is a very straightforward sort of contractual review of the annual budget adjustment to make sure that it is in line with what the contract says. So it would not be the time to get into a programmatic discussion unrelated to the contract, which I believe is why this item was put in as part of the budget discussion rather than the rate discussion. Thank you.
Because the discussion is on this item, so I want to actually ask a question, Mr. City Attorney, but I think Mr. Cook might want to answer this question as well. When I was reading this budget, I thought the $300,000 rebate is included in the budget. So in order not to include it, we have to exclude it with a motion.
No, Mayor.
That's why I asked my question. Exactly
Because,
what you're pointing out, Vince.
Because slide 13 in the supposedly revised top one actually has a $300,000 in there, and that brought the fund balance down by $300,000.
Right. Yeah. So no, it is. If you were to adopt the proposed budget, you would have to include this appropriation of $300,000, which would, as on the screen right now, shows where fund balance as exists right now would go down.
Right. So if we approve it without amendments, the $300,000 will be included. If we were to exclude it, we just need to say in the motion, approving the budget, but take out the 300.
You'd have to add. I'm sorry, Mary. You'd have to affirmatively include it.
Include the exclusion or include the 300?
Include the 300. You're essentially adding a new line item to the budget for that one time, which that's what the fund balance represents, going down from 20.5 million to 20.2.
Okay, because I was reading it has already been revised in your proposed budget, so.
Yeah, so I'm sorry, the slides got a little confusing. Yeah, the proposed revised should have said proposed revised if the council was to consider it. I apologize for that.
Brian,
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem.
would there have not been a more efficient way to propose this by separating the issues?
I apologize if tonight has been confusing and if I presented this in a sloppy manner. That's on me presenting it in this manner. That's created a little bit of that's created some confusion. So my apologies on that.
I think it's because whenever we're making decisions on expending monies financially, they are usually discussed separately. And I understand this is part of the budget, but we've done that in the past where we've, separated the two issues. And I think by putting it together, it's as I shared with you before, it's confusing, and I feel like it was just taken out of thin air.
Could I make a suggestion? Couldn't we vote on the budget excluding the 300,000 and then after that have a separate motion to approve or disapprove or not approve 300,000 and then do a line item adjustment.
Totally legal and within your authority. Yes, sir.
It just sounds more organized.
Sure. Perhaps what we want to do now, and I leave this to the mayor, but perhaps we want to just open it for public comment, see if there is anybody from the public who wishes to
I
comment.
was going to say that because, any further question we can ask later, but we're getting dangerously to actually commenting and making decisions on the budget before public comment. So let me just open up the public comment. I'm sorry for a delay, but I think we should really open up the public comment right now. So, and then we continue the questions and comments later from council. So, Madam Clerk, are there any email comments?
There are no email comments and there are no callers on the line.
Okay, then I will close public comment just to get rid of that, and then we can continue with the line of discussion and questions. And again, I'll start with Councilmember Chavez. Councilmember Chavez, we'll start with you on comments or questions.
All right, I'm still a little confused about what we're being asked to do on this item. Based on Vince's questions, it seems to be contrary to what Mr. Murphy and Mr. Cook are saying. And I kind of agree with Vince's comments, if I understand them correctly. And that is that the proposed budget before us does in fact include a one-time $300,000 rate rebate. As I'm looking at the screen right now, and that appears to be what is so. I had asked the question earlier, if voting for this budget also is a yes vote for this rate rebate, and I never really got a clear answer. I don't believe the answer that I heard was that we have to make two separate motions. One would be to approve the budget and another motion to approve or not approve the $300,000 rebate. So I'll ask again, what is it? And hopefully get a clear answer.
Councilman, this is Greg Murphy. I think we may have the person who would know the best on the line, and we haven't asked her yet. Ms. Paragas, is the $300,000 expenditure a line item in the budget yet as you prepared it?
No, it is not.
Thank you.
Okay, so the picture I'm seeing on the screen right now is not correct then, right?
It's just a proposal.
Okay, and I think Brian indicated earlier that maybe he should have put proposal on there or something, or, okay, so then again, my question is, okay, so wait, let me back up. So everything here is a proposal, isn't it? I mean, the whole budget is a proposal right now to all of us. And we have to then decide, okay, do we approve it as proposed or do we not? And again, I still keep going back to the same question. Is this $300,000 part of the proposed budget? And if we say, yes, I agree with the proposed budget, then in effect, we are agreeing with the $300,000 rebate at the same time.
You can make a motion to approve the budget that was proposed to you at the study session, and also
not the one
not to
before us?
approve this 300,000.
But
So
wait a
you can
minute, I don't know that, can we do that, Greg? I think we have to agree on what is proposed before us now. Can we go back and say, okay, because I don't know that that's even before us, the one that we didn't really approve. We basically gave direction at the last meeting. And supposedly this is based on that direction that we received.
So I think the problem we're having right now is this slide remains up on our screen. And
okay, so take it down then.
The slide represents an extra proposal that is not in the budget before you.
Okay.
If you go through the roughly 200 pages of the budget after the introductory staff report, you will not see that $300,000 line item in the physical budget itself. So an approval of the budget in front of you will not include the $300,000 line item.
All right, thank you.
Ms.
All right,
Farragut,
so-
that's correct, yes?
Yes,
Right.
that's correct.
Okay, so let me get to my comments then real briefly. And here they are. I feel a little blindsided by this whole $300,000 rebate. And the reason, and it's not because I don't agree with it or disagree with it. I just feel that it has not been vetted out correctly, has not done what we normally do when making such an expenditure, simply to put it before us as we're about to adopt a budget for the year, especially one that is so closely balanced. You know, my questions remain is that, and I know that this is supposedly a one-time relief for our residents and our commercial businesses, which I don't disagree with. Certainly offering relief to our residents and commercial businesses is something that we've been doing pretty much for the last 15 or 16 months. And I think we've been doing it pretty effectively, okay? And certainly we are okay with that. I think most of us have been anyway. But to say, okay, let's pull a number like 300,000. And to me, the irony is that the $300,000 is exactly the same amount as the $300,000 that we worked into the budget that we're receiving from Athens. To me, that's a little ironic, I guess. And it's like, all right, well, that makes sense. We're getting 300 from Athens. Let's throw it back to the public since they're going to be paying more for Athens. But again, the concerns I have is does this open up a new can of worms? Does it put us on a slippery slope in other type of issues? And can the money here be used for something, that maybe the community truly needs? I mean, I would hazard a guess, and I could be wrong, but to most of our residents here in Temple City, which I would say is we're a pretty well-off community, is based on our housing prices and everything else. I mean, we're not a low-income community. $1.69 a month is not going to make a heck of a lot of difference in most people's lives. But perhaps adding a program to help our seniors or to help handicapped people or help those in need, could that money be used in those projects or those programs better? And those would be the type of things that would normally come up in a full discussion regarding where we're going to use this 300,000, for a rebate, or are we going to use it for something else? And that was always in the back of our minds, and we've been discussing that ever since we negotiated the contract with Athens, is how to best use those monies to benefit our community as a whole, rather than simply provide $1.69 a month to each resident in Temple City. And I could be wrong, and I'm sure there's people out there that are saying, you don't have the reality, I mean, that's a lot of money. And I can recall, Mary Kakeko, may she rest in peace, she would be here telling us, hey, the money is, you guys keep raising the money. But you know what? Our trash costs, as well as most other costs, have gone up every year. Every year. This is nothing new. I mean, and I guess to some credit, our partnership with Athens has kept those costs relatively low. And that leads me to my last point, and that is, I think a lot of this is driven by the fallacy that we are paying more for less service. And that, I think, is far from the truth. For some reason, there have been people out there that are saying, well, we're going to get less service and we're paying more. Why? Well, that's not true. The trash is still going to be picked up. The same amount of trash is going to be picked up. And we're not really doing away with any of that. And, is it going to go up? Yes. But, from a relative standpoint, I mean, I hate to say it, but this past year, unfortunately, there's a lot of places that have increased their prices, and none of us are happy about it. But it seems to be the way of the world right now. And before we start throwing money around, and I know that we've talked tonight about having other monies coming into the city that we're going to have to decide what to do with. And I know that this council will look at that in a good way and say, okay, how best to take care of all of our residents and our commercial businesses. How do we do this in a good way? So again, those are my comments. I think this would be better served by discussing this outside of this budget session, and take a real good hard look at it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Councilmember Mann. Any questions?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, well, first of all, I'll start by saying that at least when I was reading through the staff report as presented, I personally didn't see the 300,000 as a line item in the budget, and it appears to be the same budget that we as a council all looked at the last budget study session. So I think the part that probably threw us off, and even myself, was that PowerPoint slide about the revised budget. So it kind of gave us all pause as to, okay, I understand Councilmember Chavez's question. Is like, okay, well, having seen that slide, I guess I could reasonably believe that maybe this is a different budget than the one that we all looked at in the study session. So actually, when everyone was asking questions, I was trying to find that 300,000, but Director Paragus really answered that for us in a couple seconds. So thank you. In terms of the budget overall, I'm very happy with the budget as it is presented. I think we went through that extensively at our last budget study session. So if we made a motion to adopt it as it is, I would have no issue with that whatsoever. Now, as for the rebate issue, it's an interesting idea, only because I remember this was maybe a year or more ago. I had been talking with City Manager Cook about, I guess I had some concerns about the increase in the organics rates for our commercial businesses, and in my mind, the thing that struck me the most was you had a lot of businesses going through the pandemic that were suffering, and particularly restaurants that probably do generate the most organic waste. And so at that time, I thought, well, would it do anything if the city was to alleviate the rates, but only for like our businesses? It hadn't occurred to me that we would be thinking about rebates across the board for the entire city. But nevertheless, I think because that was something that's been on my mind for a while, to extend this to our rates was, I guess, maybe just something that was a bit more naturally occurring to me, that, okay, that might make sense. Kind of like Councilmember Chavez mentioned, it's like, I think in principle, I agree with that concept. So I think it seems like the main issue that I hear from everyone, and then I can also relate to that, is perhaps for an item of this, if it was brought up earlier, then we could have maybe all had more chance to think about it and vet it out more. But having said that, like Mr. Murphy mentioned, there's nothing stopping us from making a line item amendment to the budget to add this if we so chose to adopt something like the rebate. Just looking at the numbers now, I don't know if that was really the the reason or the logic behind it, Mr. Cook, but at least when in the presentation as it's shown, the dollar amount, if you took the 150,000, at least for the residential rates, seems to, I guess mathematically seems to maybe mitigate, I don't know if that's the right word, but it seems to mitigate a little bit of that, the rate adjustment increases that was a result of the new contract that we had adopted with Athens a couple of months ago, along with the CPI +1 that's really on the next agenda. So for me, I mean, I don't see an issue with adopting that, but at least based on the comments, it seems like maybe some others aren't as ready to look at that issue. So I have either way, whatever council chooses to decide. I personally thought, like at least on principle, the budget is really the place to discuss issues. Maybe everyone has a different idea of what dollar amount they're comfortable with in discussing. In past budgets, each one of us have asked for clarification on certain line items of different sizes. And we've even had council members request that certain things be increased or decreased. So from a process standpoint, I don't really see that as a big issue. And as Mr. Murphy, you alluded to before, if you compare that to the size of our capital projects programs, I mean, those are truly the big ticket items that we have. But perhaps I think kind of like what we spoke about last time at the budget study session was, I think what we've been missing all along is some form of strategic council priority session that can get everybody on the same page as to, hey, we have general fund reserves. And historically, we as a council have been fiscally conservative about dipping into those unless absolutely necessary. So this 300,000, as I understand it being presented, would be taken from that unassigned general fund reserve balance. And so just based on that, I would agree with my other council members that perhaps, I don't know if it's warrants a standalone item on its own, or I think that's more of a question for Mr. Cook and staff is in terms of the sense of urgency, does this deserve an agenda item that stands alone, or are we talking about it in the context of everything else that's sort of been alluded to, kind of like the slide that Director Paragus showed us about unfunded council priorities? I mean, who's to say those aren't as important as what's before us now? Yeah, that's all my comments. I'd love to hear from other council members. Thank you.
You're on mute, sir. Sorry, Mary, you still muted.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, I can.
Yeah, sorry, I got kicked out from my laptop, so I actually have to sign in with my iPad, actually. That's why all the confusion over here. So, Councilmember Vizcarra, any questions or comments?
Well, as you know, I had to step out for a minute. What point are we actually at right now?
We are after the public comment. We're still looking at approving the budget.
Well, I think what I said earlier, in my mind anyway, sticks. I think we need to approve the budget as it was initially presented and vote on it one way or the other. And then if we want to consider an amendment of a $300,000 appropriation, then somebody can make a motion or we can talk about that. But at this point, I think we need to rule on the budget and get that out of the way as it stands.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Sternquist.
Yes. Excuse me. I think my major concern with this, adding this line item of $300,000 is, as you know, when it comes to that amount, as Councilmember Chavez said, the $300,000 just happens to be the amount of money that I asked Athens to give our community to go to the general fund, as that takes place in many cities and it wasn't in our city. So when that amount came forward, I felt that the idea of all the council members, when we accepted the terms of the contract moving forward that we are going to have in place in July, that we were going to discuss what we were going to do with that pot of money to enable us to do something wonderful for our community that we might not be able to do with everything else that we had in place to take care of, streets, stores, etc. I too find it a bit unusual that the $300,000 amount is the same amount that Athens is giving to our community. And I want to go back to, I don't think staff actually blindsided us intentionally, but I will say, I think I was very surprised in my discussions when I spoke to the city manager regarding this item on the agenda. So nothing that I'm saying now is nothing that Mr. Cook has not heard from me before. But William, at our last meeting, discussed, that we needed to come together and discuss what our priorities were for the community. And, I'm very fortunate that I do not need a rebate of whatever it is, $20 a year to help me get through these difficult times. I'm very fortunate. As Mr. Chavez, the Councilmember Chavez said, we are not a poor community. If you look at the average income, it's pretty high economically here for our city. I do agree that there are people like Mary Kokeko, seniors, the seniors that already are able to get a discount rate from Athens moving forward. I do believe that $20 could make a difference in their lives. So I am not disregarding that at all. I just want to ensure that these two items are separate, that we are not going into saying, yes, we want to give a rebate, knowing that it was the $300,000 that was coming into the community. And if you can say, yeah, I just think we're going to pull $300,000 out and look at a rebate for all our residents, that's one thing. But if we're looking at this to say, we've got $300,000 coming in from Athens, so let's give everybody a rebate, I don't really think that's what I'm comfortable with doing with that money that we haven't even discussed what would be the best opportunity. William talked about priorities, and William is our youngest council member and probably the most tech savvy and the most, if you will, William, forward thinking with technology because of his age and he's been exposed to more of this than we have. And I look at EV stations. We're going to have them at Primrose Park. We don't have them at Temple on our new parking lot on Las Tunas. What about taking $300,000? I spoke to Brian about this. It wasn't even going to be the whole amount to do EV stations because we need to prepare for the future. And if everyone's familiar with what's going on with electric vehicles and what the mandates are from the federal government and the state, we need to all go electric. They're going to stop making gas vehicles at some point in time, maybe sooner than we would like. So I think we need to prepare for the future, and we have an opportunity to take $300,000 and do something like that. Or maybe let's take a look at our seniors. Our seniors have been the most impacted by this pandemic. They have been socially isolated. They can't get around the way they used to. They can't come to the senior luncheon. But guess what? We could open up Live Oak Park much sooner than later if we spent $300,000. And I don't believe, Brian, you gave me the numbers. It was much less than that, to do an air filtering system for the whole Live Oak Park. I mean, these are just some ideas, but these are the type of things that I think it would be prudent for us to say. Are we going to get the most bang for the buck by giving everybody, including the people like me, who don't really need $20 a year? I'm happy to donate my $20 to somebody who needs it, versus doing something for our senior population, for everybody to enjoy at Live Oak Park. I mean, these are just a couple of things that I've thought of. I know all of you have, great ideas and things that could really enhance our community. So I'd like to, move forward with doing the budget and looking at this large sum of money down the road to see, would we have just arbitrarily, if we were not getting $300,000 from Athens this year, would this be on your agenda to approve? That's my question, and those are my comments.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Well, let me say my comment. I was the one that asked Mr. Cook to put this on the agenda. So let's make that clear. The reason why this is on the agenda is really the next item. We are going to consider a rate increase from Athens. And as many of you actually have received comments from our residents complaining how high the rates have been. Maybe some of you didn't. I did. I certainly refused to have comments. About the rate increase earlier this year, and actually it was read in the council comments last few times. There were residents writing in and saying that, well, how come the rates increased? But this is going to be the second time the rate will be perceived as increased tonight. So, but regardless, we're not talking about the Athens rate here, but that's the reason why this is on the agenda, was that, and actually I appreciate the city manager, because there are new things happen between the study session and now. That is, now that we do have the American Rescue Plan, money coming in, that was, as we discussed last time at the study session, it wasn't clear as to how it was going to be dispensed and how it's going to come. So we do have money coming in. That is, while we don't have it at this minute, but it will be something reflected in our unfunded, not unfunded, in our unassigned fund balance. So the minor dip is going to go back up again. I don't disagree that it is the council's discretion as to how we spend our money, but I don't think it is out of line at all in the budget discussion to study and agree on how we spend a budget. I mean, if the majority did not agree it should be in the part of the budget, that's fine. I'm fine with that. But I do think that it would be very nimble for us, knowing that we have a different budget situation now that we know about the ARP, now that we're also looking at a rate increase that will be considered in just a few minutes, for us to consider how we can relieve that budget, the budget hit to our residents. I mean, maybe one of you, a few of you said, well, we really don't care about the few dollars to your trash account. But when we make policies, we have to be we have to equally apply to all residents. And I would say all of us here and all of our businesses, there's one thing in common. We all pay trash funds. We all have to pay trash. So it's not really necessarily singling out Athens to rebate on the Athens rate, but it is a way in light of COVID, in light of the ARP money coming in, which what's the whole purpose of ARP? ARP money is to help all the cities and all its residents. And this is, in my mind, a good opportunity for us to really do something solid. Previously, we reach out and help a few residents with rent subsidy. We help a few businesses with a one-time rescue money, if you will. But now, at the end of the ending is in sight with COVID, and we do know that now we have positively ARP money coming in. Granted, it's not the ARP money for a rebate, but it's going to be going into the unassigned fund balance. In my mind, there's nothing wrong and absolutely right for this council in a very quick and nimble way to consider that as part of our budget. There's nothing hidden about it. That's why it was brought up for discussion. Just like before, and I remember we discussed our budget, city budget, and somebody suggested we should add patrol. And we actually moved around the budget and added, traffic control budget into the budget. So there's nothing wrong and absolutely proper for all of us to consider budget adjustment when we approve the budget. So I think that's all I have, and so that's my comment. So after that, I'm ready for a motion to approve the budget as is or otherwise.
So, Mr. Mayor, can I make a motion to approve the budget as is without the line item for the rebate monies?
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
It's moved and seconded. Madam Clerk, roll call vote, please.
Yes, Mayor. Councilmember Chavez,
Yes.
Councilmember Mann,
Yes.
Councilmember Viscara,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Sternquist,
Yes.
Mayor Yu.
Yes. So moving on. So the budget has been approved without the, and I guess we approved the resolution adopting the budget, and without the $300,000 rebate in the budget. So next item is unfinished business. There is none. And before we move into our next item, which is new business, I suggest that we take a 5-minute break. It's been 2 hours since we started our meeting, so let's come back in about 5 minutes.
Thank you.
And of our meeting. Is Madam Clerk back recording it? Okay. So next item is new business, consideration of annual rate adjustment requested by Athens for solid waste collection. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor Yu, members of the council. Before you tonight, as you'll remember in February with the amended and restated agreement, the annual fee, the annual adjustment to Athens rates included 2 components. Prior, the annual rate increase would be a very relatively complicated adjustment, which would include the cost of disposal on a yearly basis that Athens was incurring and then passing on to customers. As part of this new restated and amended agreement, we agreed to two more straightforward components. One is just the CPI the LA Long Beach CPI of that year, which is a little over 2.1% this year, related to those consumer price index scale. and then a 1% annual capital replacement fee. So which puts the annual rate increase at about 3.19%. There are also some minor adjustments to the AB 939 fees one time, will not grow from there on a go-forward basis. Those AB 939 fees are part of the process, which now we are compliant with SB 1383, the organics and diversions. We are just waiting for Cal Recycle to essentially to get us off the naughty list in terms of being in non-compliance. But those AB 939 fees assist with the compliance that will be much more complex going into the future. So with that being said, the submittal from Athens was received in a timely manner in accordance with the new and restated, amended and restated agreement. And so we are here for any questions.
Let's start with Councilmember Chavez. Any questions on the rate increase?
No question, thank you.
Councilmember Mann.
I have no questions. Thank you.
Councilmember Viscar.
No questions, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem, do you have any questions?
No,
Mayor Pro
sorry.
Tem,
Thank you.
no, okay. Well, I don't have any questions on the rate adjustment request because that's part of the agreed upon contract. At this time, I will open up for public comment. Madam Clerk, are there any email comments?
There are no email public comments.
And I don't see any callers either. So I will close public comments. Any final questions or comments from the council, from anyone?
No.
Hearing none, I am ready for a motion to approve the annual rate adjustment request.
Mayor, I'll move to approve the rate increase.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, move and seconded. Thank you. Madam Clerk, roll call vote, please.
Yes, Mayor. Councilmember Chavez,
Yes.
Councilmember Mann,
Yes.
Councilmember Viscara,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Sternquist,
Yes.
Mayor Yu.
Yes. So the rate increase has been approved. Next item, update from city manager.
Thank you, Mary Yu, members of the council. A couple updates for tonight. One, 4th of July coming up. As the budget that you just passed, we're actually going to do some enhanced enforcement, considering that everybody's been through a lockdown. There's an anticipation of a lot more fireworks happening. So enforcement this year will be both, prior it was just on the 4th of July. This year, enforcement will be on the 3rd and the 4th. A 4-unit, 6-deputy, 2 PSO team will be out on the 3rd, and 8 deputies and 2 PSOs will be out in a 5-unit team on the 4th of July. So we will have a lot of cars on the street, but from what we're hearing and anticipating, a lot of fireworks, even with that level of saturation throughout the city, we're still going to hear a lot. And at the enforcement, as Mr. Urzumi can tell you, because he's out there along with our team, is quite a chore. So banners up, we'll put out the PSAs and everything else, but we are going to have a pretty large contingency out the 3rd and the 4th. As has been noted today, the California economy did open up. We are still taking a very cautious approach in terms of city facilities. We're trying to see how the 4th of July looks, but today you would have seen some changes in our park. For example, picnic benches, the gazebo, excuse me, and other basketball hoops. Everything else is up, back and running. We have been open. We've been taking appointments for many weeks now. A little bit of uptake in appointments this week as well. And so as we gradually move along. I need to again thank you as a council for all your support over these last long year plus. We haven't even seen Council Member Viscara at a meeting yet, but we will at some point. And again, thank you to the staff who, I can't tell you how amazing it was to see how quickly we pivoted. I feel like I'm in the twilight zone, but I remember sitting down with Scott one day, and Scott had a very thorough plan about how he was going to transition to essentially go to a completely online building and safety. I remember talking with Mr. Matsumoto about what things he was going to be able to do just to make sure and we maintained everything. I remember talking to Mr. Arizumi about what we're going to do on the public safety front. It feels like a long time ago. You almost kind of forget. It's almost a little bit of a blur, but and I'm missing a lot of people, Ms. Flores, Ms. Quote, everybody on the team. But man, did we make an amazing pivot very quickly. And the fruits of that have been really that I think Councilmember Chavez has said it before as well. You know, from a service standpoint, we really continue to provide a extremely high level of service just in a lot of different ways. And that is the credit to all the staff. And thank you to the council for both allowing us to do that. The stress, I think, that had built up in the public, and I think we're starting to feel that even a little bit more right now as we gradually get back to a lot of other things. For things like, for example, concerts in the park will be starting July 21st. Give us a little bit of space between 4th of July. Rentals of the gazebo and our picnic shelters are going on now. So those things that we can do very easily that people were accustomed to and enjoying the amenities. We are still being cautious about indoor use. That's why we're trying to control capacity and other things that I understand the health order kind of dictates where we go. But we, in the next few months, after we get a few weeks past the July 4th holiday, there'll be a few more of the city facilities that most residents don't use on a day-to-day basis, but most of the facilities that residents use on a day-to-day basis have slowly and gradually reopened. And thank you again for your support. 4th of July reopening. And then we went in detail about the Recovery Act money. I did sign a couple documents this last week, and we are ready and willing to accept that wire transfer that comes from the state of California. Susan is waiting with bated breath to get that $4 million in hand, and then we will come to you in mid-August after there's clarity from the guidelines, even though it seems a little bit looser than it was when we first looked at those guidelines with community benefit versus COVID recovery. We'll be able to go through and delineate out for the council what those things are and what your priorities are at the end of the day. This is an extraordinary opportunity. I've been in local government for more than 20 years, and I've never seen an opportunity like this come across for a city to really reinvest in its community, which is quite exciting. Obviously, I'm chomping at the bit to repave a few more roads here and there, but we have a lot of priorities for the council to consider. So, and again, thank you for, this is a big day for California. This is a big day as we continue to move forward, and thank you for your continued support, and thank you to the entire city team. That's it for me.
Did you share the amount of vaccinated percentage that you sent us the email? That's exciting.
Oh, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Yes, we are closer to 80%. I think, Mr. Arizumi, why don't you give the update real quick? Mr. Arizumi has been diligent about sending the situational updates, which really gives an amazing chronology of this event. If you ever want to kind of look back and see where we were, go ahead and read, and if they're on the website, they are available to the public. It's an amazing chronology of where we have been for the last 16 months. But Brian, do you want to just give a quick update on that? I don't have it right in front of me. If you're there, Mr. Arizumi.
Yeah, I had to look it up real quick. And so in LA County, 16 years old or older with at least one dose, we have a little bit over almost 5.5 million people, which is about 65.9% of the population. However, in Temple City, we have about 23,542 16 and older with at least one dose, and that accounts for 74.7% of our population. And 65 and older with at least one dose in the county overall is about 1.2 million, or 86.3% of the population. And in Temple City, we have 5,626, which accounts for 80% of our population. And so 80% of our population 65 and older are either vaccinated with one dose or fully vaccinated with two doses, or unless it's one dose with the J&J. And then about 75% of our population 60 and older are vaccinated with at least one dose, or fully vaccinated with two doses or one dose of J&J.
Thank you, Brian, and thank you for those updates as well, for the staff, the community, and the council. That was included the 4 clinics that we did with Herald Christian Health Center. Thank you to Mary Yu and others making some of those connections for us. And then thank you to the LA County Sheriff's Department and for them to do the latter 2 that we did. And thank you to all the staff. I teased one staff member, we called him Doctor, as we were going, and he was working with the individuals who were in the waiting area. So thank you for the whole team for really putting in a team. You have almost all of our staff were there assisting and with those vaccination clinics. So thank you for bringing that up, Mayor Pro Tem.
All right. Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Thank you, Mr. Rizumi. Next item is update from Mr. City Attorney, Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, sir. Mayor and Council, I'll keep this brief in light of the hour. The governor's executive order that came out late last week substantially revised many of the provisions of his orders of March, April, May, June 2020. As most relevant to us, the sort of suspension is probably the best word of certain Brown Act requirements has been extended to September 30th of this year and is currently set to expire on that date. This was done, we understand, to give public entities time to ramp back up, to make their own best plans, their own best decisions for getting back to their meetings. So some entities are turning around and starting public meetings next week. Others are doing different types of hybrids. Others are spacing things out over time. There is no one best way to go. And so, as I say, each entity's kind of following their own path, but with that September 30th deadline in mind, we're, as a firm, continuing to review the rest of the executive order. But I will say the most interesting part was what was not covered, and that is what the Occupational Safety and Health Board is considering this week, which are changes to some of the rules regarding workers' compensation, and the potential for infection in the workplace. So as that board comes out with its rulings later on this week, the governor has promised to put those into a second executive order to make them effective immediately rather than after a 2-week waiting period. So it sounds like on Friday we'll have yet more things to look at, and that my partners in the labor and employment practice will be especially looking at those. Happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, have a great evening.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Next item is council reports regarding ad hoc or standing committee meetings. Do we have any reports?
Oh.
Well, actually, Councilman Viscar, you want to kind of touch on the ad hoc committee meeting we had?
I thought we were out of order. That's what I was looking at. Last Friday, was it last? Yeah, it was last Friday. The Public Arts Commission folks met with Adam and the mayor and myself. The people that the citizens that are joining us on the committee Robert Hepler and Kathy Keelan, both of whom were on the Public Arts Commission in prior years. And Adam gave them, and we contributed, gave them a good overview of the Primrose project. And they became very interested. They're enthused. They're full of ideas. That day they were full of ideas already, even though they were seeing were the bare bones. But I know the two of them have gone back and have huddled and are coming up with ideas. We showed them the what is it? 3 spots, right, Vince? That
Right.
are dedicated to public art, with some options on walls and walkways and stuff like that. So they're going to start putting, they've started putting ideas together, and we're going to come back together at the property on July 15th, is it? Something like that.
Yeah.
About the
Yeah,
second
right.
weekend in July. I know one of the things that they both mentioned to me, and I don't remember if they said it in the meeting or not, that our budget's a bit skimpy for what it is that they already know they'd like to do. So all that has to get sorted out, but we're underway. And that was it. We'll be back meeting together in about 3 weeks.
Yeah. The only thing I just want to add to that was that once we have some ideas firmed up, we're going to bring them back to the council for consideration.
I think we've got quite a bit of fleshing out to do.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
That's
Anyone else? Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Then moving on to council items separate from the city manager's regular agenda, starting with Councilmember Chavez.
Thank you, Mayor Yu. First, I think we need to move the update from the city attorney to the beginning of the agenda so that he never feels rushed, and it's like we're always cutting him short. It's like it's a late hour, and we don't want to hear from the attorney, and I think we have to consider that for you, Greg. So
Thank you, sir.
I thought we were saving the best for the last.
yeah, right. It sometimes doesn't happen that way. Okay. All right. A few items. First of all, I want to thank staff again for putting together the budget. I know it's not an easy thing, especially in today's world, but they've done a good job. And, I appreciate the fact that you've stayed away from these monies from the Recovery Act. Old saying, never spend money you don't have. I know we're all hoping that we get it, but anything that comes from a government agency, I always take with a grain of salt, it seems, these days. But we'll remain positive that money will come in. And then along those lines, I just want to follow up on our discussion that we had with the budget, especially concerning the rebates and other issues. And, I have no doubt that this council, once those monies are received and we know better off where we're going to be from a financial standpoint, that we will have a very good discussion and be able to adopt priorities that will benefit our entire community, both residents and the business communities as well. And I don't think you've heard the last of either potential rebates or anything that will, of course, hopefully help our community at some point. So hold on, and we'll get to that point, that hopefully sooner than later. Let's see. I visited our McDonald's today. Those of you who may recall that our local McDonald's on Las Tunas has reopened their in-person dining, their lobby. So I was talking to the manager today, and he was excited about the fact that that's reopening so that people can come in and relax. And it was actually pretty cool in there this morning, so people have a way of beating the heat. Interestingly enough, I know the owner of that McDonald's. It's actually a Loyola family. I think Greg probably knows who they are as well. But very
Is that
nice.
the Pernecki family?
Yeah, and yeah, they're very nice, and they were there as well today too. So.
Did you get a cup of coffee?
No, I didn't get a cup of coffee. It was a little too warm for coffee by the time I was there. But it was a good little crowd. They were very nice about it. Yeah.
Just a short story on the Pernecki family. When I was teaching at Holy Family, in my 3rd grade class, I was teaching them how to write letters. And let's write something that you're really interested in. And they said, well, we don't like styrofoam. So we wrote letters to Mr. Pernecki, the owner of the one in South Pasadena. I didn't realize he owned Temple City also. And we went to the mailbox. They addressed the envelopes. We put them in the mail. And about 2 weeks after the gentleman receiving 36 letters saying how bad McDonald's was for using styrofoam, I got a message from our Monsignor at the school, and he called me in and said, Cynthia, don't ever have your class write letters to anybody I play golf with.
Well, hopefully they got the message.
Well, he did send his daughter, Julie Pernecki, to my class to talk to the kids and say that they were using a new product moving forward called styrene, something similar, but it was a lesson for me too, I think. Check with their pastor to make sure that he doesn't golf with whomever you're complaining to.
Or probably doesn't hurt that they were probably donors to the place as well.
Oh,
No,
of course.
they're a good family. They own a few of the McDonald's in the local area. They do donate quite a bit, and yeah, so it was exciting to talk to them, and glad they're doing well. So let's see what else. Our youth committee interviews are going to begin soon. We received a number of applications for the coming year, and we will be conducting those interviews coming up soon and get them in place. We only have 2 returning members, as you may recall, so we've got a few shoes to fill this year, but I'm sure we'll get some pretty good applicants in that regard. Those of you who may have been driving around, notice that our Little League fields have got players on them, and our Little League Temple City Little Leagues have done well. They've had an abbreviated schedule. I attended the closing day ceremonies for the Temple City National Little League, which plays their games at Longden on Milham Field. And big shout out to Dustin Duhamel. Some of you may know that name. Dustin, a couple of years ago, came to our city council meeting with his 10-year-old All-Stars who won the state tournament that year. And he is retiring from Little League Baseball. His sons have grown up, and so we had a little special ceremony for him. So big shout out to him and his family, longtime Temple City contributors. And let's see, what else? I think that's it. You know, I know that we've mentioned this before, and I know our city attorney had talked about the fact that June 15th is, you know, a big day, of course, in the history, or in California, of course, as far as removing many of us have been under, and which is nice, but you know, I still want to remind people that, you know, it's fun. It never ceases to amaze me that if you look at the newspaper, you have an article that says, you can, don't have to do these restrictions. You can take off your mask, you can do all this stuff. And then in the article next to it says, the coronavirus is still present. We're concerned about the new variant. So it's like, okay, what do we do? And I guess, and we've talked about this before, you know, it's not the time to necessarily say, okay, this is 2019 again. I think it's important for people to understand that there are still situations where we need to wear a mask, still social distance, and still use common sense. And, you know, hopefully that will keep occurring. I know we've done a great job of it in Temple City. It would be nice if many of our surrounding cities were doing the same thing, which I'm sure they're trying to do as well. So, but just remember that, you know, it's not over yet. And hopefully it will be sooner than later. And last thing, Vince, great haircut.
Thank you. Thank you.
You-
I figure
you-
it's about time.
Yeah, we noticed. We noticed. Very, very good. Okay.
Yeah, as we open up, actually, I'll be going back full time back to the office very soon. So
Yeah, good.
I think
All
it's
right.
about time. So
All right. Thank
All
you
right,
very
thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
thank you, Councilmember Mann. Any items from you?
Oh, yes, thank you, Mayor Yu. Yeah, I just want to echo the sentiments about the budget. I know it's a tough document to put together, so really appreciate the effort. And I do appreciate all of my colleagues' comments. Everyone kind of looks at the budget perhaps in a very different perspective. We all have different varying comfort levels about how certain things are done and whatnot. But I do want to say I actually do appreciate, Mayor, you bringing that rebate issue up, because it was just something I had thought about in a completely different context before. So when this came up, very natural segue. But granted, hopefully we can kind of have a more fruitful discussion about that in the near future. But having said that, yeah, today is a big day for a lot of our businesses. I do want to say though that you know, not all businesses are viewing reopening in the same with the same enthusiasm. And I say this only because just today I happened to go by T Station on Temple City Boulevard in Las Vegas, and noticed that they were still only taking to-go orders. And I actually asked them, I said, hey, you have any plans to reopen anytime soon? And they said they want to take it cautiously. So, and then contrast that with, I think over the weekend, I had Summer Rose and talked to Tony, and he says they were ready for today. They were like, bring on the reopening. We can't wait. So yeah, it's, you know, everyone's going to be looking at this reopening in a very different way. I know even amongst us here, we're probably there's a difference between full-blown optimism to, you know, muted enthusiasm, you know, guarded optimism. I guess I kind of fall within the guarded optimism spectrum. I'm happy we've reached a milestone with the vaccination rates. But I think earlier today on, I think it was the KPCC segment, they mentioned that at least a lot of the, what's the term for people who study pandemics? I can't remember. But anyway, they say the ideal target that you're trying to aim for is at least 80%. And we're not there yet before you start becoming, I guess, at the larger scale where the scientists start becoming, you know, really confident about how we're fighting the pandemic. So I thought that was an interesting perspective that some scientists might have versus, you know, us citizens, you know, can't wait to go forward. And but anyway, I do want to also applaud city manager and our management staff for the cautious approach taken. I think protecting our folks would always be a number one priority, and so I think we've done a great job in that. Having said that, as we've discussed before, I'm always looking forward to, you know, how our reopening plan sort of unfolds. You know, whether it's City Hall, whether it's community center, whether it's, you know, council chambers for council meetings in the future. And having said that, I have a virtual neighborhood watch meeting coming up, I believe Thursday evening, right? Thursday evening at 6 o'clock. And so I know we've also received some comments in the past about when can those meetings start transitioning back to in-person. The level of engagement, at least what I've seen over the years with Neighborhood Watch, is really a lot more engaging in person. if you've ever been to one. And a lot of credit to, Brian Arizumi, as well as our dedicated deputies for making it such an engaging event to go to. So I'm looking forward to the virtual neighborhood watch, and also looking forward to seeing how we can also safely do those in-person events in the future. Last but not least, I know we have 4th of July coming up, and thank you, Mr. Cook, for giving us the detail on the enforcement. Just yesterday evening, my entire family was woken up by what appeared to be a really loud firework outside. It must have been like right outside our block. It was like 2 a.m. and bang, there was this loud flash. So we were all talking about, now that we're reopening, what is 4th of July going to really look like in Temple City? So I appreciate the proactive enforcement. I know our teams always try to do the best we can, but at least mentally, I'm also bracing for a lot of fireworks, just because of the circumstance. Lastly, I do want to mention that we every year for the last 4 or 5 years, we had this group called IPAC that would rent out Temple City Park to do a 4th of July celebration. I can't remember what IPAC stands for. I think it was, I'm not going to try, but what part of the leadership of that organization is actually the current Vice Mayor of San Gabriel, Tony Ding. And I'm not sure if I've asked them to forward that invitation for that ceremony to the rest of council. I'm not sure if you've received it yet, but because we haven't fully reopened our facilities yet, this year they're actually holding their 4th of July celebration in front of the San Gabriel Mission Playhouse. It'll be an outdoor event.
What do they do, William?
Is
it religious or?
No, it's not. If I were to say, they're probably more like a I don't want to call them like a political association, but they're more central. They're trying to, I guess, bring together a lot of the API groups that are interested in like local politics, and it's almost like a networking group. But for whatever reason, they really liked Temple City Park as a location. So I think for the last at least 3 or 4 years, I don't know if you remember, Brian, they've rented out the gazebo, and they always have it the weekend, either the weekend before July 4th or within 2 weeks of July 4th. They have a flag raising ceremony. They bring in the Boy Scout troops. They, if I recall, they try to honor veterans as part of that association, and they also try to invite elected officials to attend as well. So I think for the most part, at least the ones I've been to, I think I went maybe 2 years ago. They do a pretty good job. It's a pretty well run celebration. So I'll check with Tony if rest of the council hasn't received it. I'll try to make sure he gets that to you. Thank you.
You're muted, sir.
Sorry. Thank you for constantly needing reminder tonight. Councilmember Viscar, any items from you?
Just a few. Brian, thank you and your staff for all the work you guys have been doing. Job well done. I know what Councilmember Mann is talking about with the fireworks. A couple of times I've had, when I've been out for a walk with my dogs, their dogs' ears are very sensitive. And we got just a little ways and these things started going off. They were terrified. I had to bring them back to the house and take them inside the house. So how does your dog do, Tom, with those fireworks? I guess he's gone.
No, I'm still here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we actually have to give her some, we give her some sedatives because she doesn't like them at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. And I think that's, I think one of the things that people have told us over the years is it's really the animals who are affected most.
They really suffer.
Yeah, unfortunate.
And lastly, we had a Kiwanis meeting today and everybody's all excited. Well, first of all, we went back to the North Woods. They opened it up to the public, and that's where we normally have our meetings. So it was nice to have a meeting in person with everybody. And one of the things everybody was asking me is, when are we going back to having regular council meetings in person? And are we going to have lights on Temple City and all the other things we do? And I told them, well, I'm sure we're going to do that. And when we're going back, I'm not sure yet. Brian hasn't told me. So, but I know it'll be soon. Anyway, that's all.
Hey,
All right, thank you.
Hey, Vince, just real quick to
Sure.
William's point. The IPAC is the Chinese American Political Action Committee. And we did receive, or at least I got an invitation from Lucky Lou regarding their celebration on Saturday, June 26th in front of the San Gabriel Mission. So yeah, so I did receive that. I guess they're doing it together with the Asian American Advocacy Alliance group. So yeah, and let's see, I received this, I think it was on June 8th, last Tuesday.
Okay, great. Thank you, Tom.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem, any items?
Just on a couple of things on IAPAC, Tony Ding sent the invitation to me by text today, and it's just the flyer. So if anybody needs that, I could forward you the flyer for that. It's interesting because I don't know exactly what the I stands for, but it actually goes from right to left instead of the letters going from I mean, it goes from left to right when you read it. Chinese American Political Action, and then there's no C, but there's the I. It's really a very nice group. The past two, I guess my first two elections, they actually reached out and asked me if I would come for an interview, and Tony Ding was one of the, I think he might have been president at the time. And they reach out to local officials that are running for election in the San Gabriel Valley, and they give everyone an opportunity to come before their board, tell them what you stand for, and if you would like their support, they actually will have people walk for you. So they really support everyone who's interested in running for local government. So that's the very first time I met Tony Ding, actually, was when he was president and invited me to come and meet with the group. The 4th of July event, I think the very first one was maybe at Live Oak Park, and then they progressed to using the gazebo, but it really is a nice special event. So I encourage everyone to go if you can. I wanted to ask Brian a couple of things. One regarding the coyotes. There has been just such an increase of coyote sightings in Temple City, and I'm wondering if we have reached out to the COG to see, what the stats are on that. I mean, we've paid into have the pool to have them filter phone calls, etc. So it would be nice to have a staff member reach out to them and maybe give us an update on how we're doing, and remind the public about things that they can do to help mitigate the problems that result from coyotes in our city.
No problem.
So if you could follow up on that, Brian, I would appreciate it. Mr. Cook mentioned that the recovery money that's available, it's like no really other time that we can recall that monies like this have been made available. And I think that really gives us the opportunity and the charge to really look at aligning what we are going to do with some of these monies with our strategic goals, because we all know, we've been here long enough to know that, you know, you can have the most wonderful goals in the world, but if you don't have a budget to support it, you're not going to be able to implement those goals. So I think it's important for us to continue to, you know, have those strategic goals aligned with the budget. So I think those are great conversations that we can have, Mr. Mayor. And if, you know, you can somehow find a time when we can maybe get together and do some type of study session moving forward, I think it would be appreciated. Then let's see, what else was I going to share? Had the opportunity to go out to Lancaster on a, what is the bus called? I forget, that has the accordion in the middle. It looks like an accordion, very, very long. I cannot think, articulated. So we went out on an articulated bus that is really like riding a roller coaster. I mean, you get so nauseous if you sit in the back. And we went out to a BYD plant and actually got to see how the electric buses are put together, from the very first piece all the way to a bus that's ready to go out onto the street. So it was extremely interesting. I can tell you that electric buses, we actually saw an electric trash truck. So electric vehicles are in the works more and more. And, you know, they're producing almost 1,800 electric buses per year now, which is a lot of electric buses. And anything we can do to help support electric vehicles in our city, maybe not an electric bus, but just electric cars, I'm all in about. Thank you, Suzanne, for the budget. Everyone for your comments tonight, and have a great rest of the week.
All right, thank you for that. And I too echo my fellow council members' sentiment, and thank you, Mr. Cook and Director Paragus for and everybody, not just the two of you, and putting together a great budget. I mean, looking back, I mean, today is actually a great day to look back on the pandemic. And in the beginning, I recall none of us quite know what was going on, and you know, it's like every day there's bad news, and right now it's like every day there's better news. So I'm so glad we're finally getting through it, but really through our fiscal conservatism and also a lot of proactive work on Mr. Cook, staff's part, and also Mr. Murphy as well, as our city attorney, and really got through this pandemic and coming out okay. And I also agree with my council members that you know, it's not very often we actually have an infusion of cash from the government, from the federal government, but the whole goal of that is really to help our residents in the end. So if we cannot agree on the rebate tonight, that's fine. Let's look at other priorities and look at maybe the guidelines will be clearer. And I also agree with Councilmember Chavez. It's always good to actually have the money in our bank, in our hands, before we decide what to do with it. So I'm looking forward to that, and looking forward to a great 4th of July weekend, as we won't meet until after the 4th of July. So that's all I have, and now we'll move on to the next item, which is additional public comments, an item not listed. Madam Clerk, do we have any email comments?
There are no email public comments.
And I don't see any additional callers, so I will close public comments. So I will adjourn the meeting. Have a good evening, everyone. And for those who are listening, have a great 4th.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Bye.
Night.